Craving a taste of Japan? Look no further. TokyoTreat is here to bring you a fun and exclusive Japanese snack box right to your doorstep, packed with unique and exciting flavors straight from Japan. Every month, TokyoTreat brings you a variety of full-sized Japanese snacks, from rare Kit Kats and delicious specialty chips to refreshing Japanese sodas you can only get in Japan. This month's theme is all about Osaka, Japan's food paradise. They've packed this box with snacks that capture the city's most iconic flavors, sweet and savory delights that will take your taste buds on an unforgettable adventure. Get ready to indulge in Kit Kat Mont Blanc, crunchy wasabi seaweed chips, and a refreshing plum soda. It's all the deliciousness of Osaka, from street food flavors to sweet treats, without ever leaving your home. Now, I personally loved the limited edition Kit Kats and the tangy plum soda, and I'm a bit of a sucker for wasabi, so I love the chips. But honestly, in this box, there's truly something for everyone. So why not treat yourself or surprise a loved one with a taste of Japan? Experience Japan's most exciting flavors from the comforts of your home with TokyoTreat. Don't miss out. Check my links below and use my code JNightmares to get an exclusive discount on your very own TokyoTreat box. It's the perfect gift for any Japan lover, or a delicious way to treat yourself. Let me introduce you to Sakuraco, a monthly Japanese artisan snack box that supports local communities and celebrates Japan's rich tradition and craftsmanship. Each box comes with 20 traditional, authentic, and artisan snacks, from delicious sweets to savory delights, paired with fine Japanese teas, plus a special piece of Japanese tableware. This month, the theme is extra special. It's the heart of Ishikawa. After the devastating earthquake of 2024, the people of Ishikawa have faced many challenges, threatening the region's traditions and livelihoods. This month, in collaboration with Ishikawa Prefecture, Sakuraco brings you a mindfully created collection of artisan snacks, crafted by local makers who have weathered more than the storm. Enjoy flavors unique to Ishikawa, like hojicha, kinakomochi, crispy yuzu senbei, and the sweet delight of kagashizuku rice candy. Every bite supports a local community working towards renewal and revitalization. All of these snacks pair perfectly with Ishikawa's bocha roasted tea, and this month's exclusive tableware item, the elegant wakasa, ohashi, or chopsticks. You'll also receive a booklet filled with information about each snack, cultural insights, and allergen details. My personal favorites, the shiroebi arare, featuring local white shrimp from Hokuriku, and the delicious sweet potato snack from the resilient Noto region. Why not treat yourself or surprise a loved one with a Sakuraco box? Experience Japan's traditional flavors while supporting local artisans. Don't forget to check the links below and use my code JNightmares for an exclusive discount. And now, as we journey into the heart of Japan, let's explore some of the country's most chilling urban legends. Our first collection of stories? Why, I can't think of a better place to start than the haunting coastlines of Ishikawa Prefecture. Keeping with the theme of this month's box from Sakuraco, I want to share with you 5 urban legends from Ishikawa Prefecture. Number 1. the Yurei Chirihama Beach. In Ishikawa Prefecture, along the misty sands of Chirihama Beach, a unique coastal stretch where visitors can drive directly on the firm sand, lurks an unsettling legend. Locals tell of a yurei, a ghostly figure, said to haunt the shoreline. According to the tale, the ghost is a woman dressed in white, endlessly searching for a lost lover who drowned in the churning waters long ago. On foggy nights, her mournful figure is said to drift just beyond the breaking waves, her silhouette barely distinguishable from the ocean mist, her sorrowful cries, sometimes a mix with the howling wind, a sound that chills even the bravest souls. Visitors who drive along the beach at night report feeling a sudden, inexplicable drop in temperature. Occasionally, drivers glimpse a woman's face in their rear view mirror, her eyes filled with sadness, only for her to vanish the moment they turn around. Some say that those who encounter her are followed home, where she leaves damp, sandy footprints on their doorstep, and sometimes in their homes that won't dry until morning comes. The legend continues to draw curious adventurers and ghost hunters to Ishikawa's Chirihama Beach, but locals caution against lingering too long after sunset, for those who do so risk carrying the sorrow of the yurei back to their own doorsteps, tied to the grief of the ocean and the tragic love story that refuses to fade. The eerie story makes Chirihama Beach not only just a scenic destination, but a mysterious and haunting location tied to the spirit and traditions of Ishikawa. Number 2. The Phantoms of Mount Hakusan. Mount Hakusan, a sacred peak in Ishikawa, is known for mysterious flickering lights that appear on its slopes during summer nights. These phantom fires are believed to be supernatural in origin, associated with the spirits of monks who lost their way or died during their pilgrimages to the mountains. Locals caution hikers not to follow the lights, as they may lead to dangerous or treacherous areas, luring the unwary to their doom. It's a legend that combines the mystical with the deadly, a reminder of the mountain's ancient spiritual significance. The Kappa of Lake Kahokugata. The legend of Kappa, a mischievous water spirit, is strong in the region around Lake Kahokugata. These creatures are said to dwell in the lake's depths, emerging to cause trouble for anyone who ventures too close to the water. The yokai, Kappa, are known for their childlike appearance, with green, scaly skin and a bowl-like depression on their heads that holds water, the source of their strength. They are pranksters at heart, but some stories suggest a darker side, where children are lured to the water's edge, never to be seen again. Ghostly faces in Kanazawa's old town. Kanazawa, with its well-preserved Edo period streets, holds many secrets, and locals whisper about strange happenings in the city's older districts. It is said that at night you might catch a glimpse of ghostly faces peering out from behind the sliding doors of abandoned houses, remnants of the people who lived there long ago. These spirits, known as Zashiki Warashi, are believed to bring either good or bad fortune depending on how they're treated. Those who disrespect them are said to suffer terrible luck, while those who show respect may receive a blessing. The Weeping Bamboo Grove. In a small secluded grove in Ishikawa, there is a bamboo forest known as the Weeping Grove. Locals believe that this grove is haunted by the spirits of betrayed lovers who met on tragic ends. On quiet, windless nights, the bamboo is said to weep, a faint, mournful sound that seems to echo from nowhere. People who have ventured too close to the grove after dark report feeling heavy sadness, hearing disembodied sobs, or seeing shadowy figures lurking among the bamboo stalks. These legends reflect the mysterious and spiritual side of Ishikawa Prefecture, capturing the imagination of those brave enough to explore the region's haunted corners. Whether tied to nature, ancient spirits, or the tragedies of human life, each story adds to Ishikawa's unique folklore. Now, if you still want more scares from Ishikawa, please check out my video on the Shishinoke, a disturbing, full-length cryptid sighting, which I will link below. Just as a warning, some of these stories may contain distressing and disturbing themes, so please proceed with caution. Hikiko San is an internet-born urban legend said to have originated in the early 2000s. Over time, the story evolved as it was shared and copied by many users, with new details being added, leading to the widespread of the tale. The legend goes like this: if you're walking down an empty street on a rainy day, you might encounter a woman dressed in tattered white clothes, dragging along what seems to be a life-sized doll. However, on closer inspection, you'll realize that the woman's eyes are unnaturally slanted upwards, and her mouth is slit all the way to her ears. The doll she's dragging is not just a toy, it's an actual child. The woman captures any children who see her and drags them around until their bodies are reduced to nothing but mangled lumps of flesh, and then she abandons them in a specific location. The reason for her actions is said to stem from the intense bullying that she endured as a child, causing her to seek revenge on other children by turning them into these mounds of flesh. This urban legend gained even more attention after being featured on a TV show, which spread it nationwide. It has since been adapted into horror films, including one released in 2008 called Hikiko San. So now I'd like to take a look at a popular version of the Hikiko San story, just so you can get a flavor of what the urban legend's about. One day, a boy named A was on his way to school when he encountered a woman moving at an incredible speed. She was unusually tall, wearing a worn-out white kimono, and her long hair obscured her face, but he could see that her eyes were slanted and her mouth stretched unnaturally wide. She was dragging something behind her that was about his body size. At first it looked like a doll, but as A got closer, he realized it was actually another child. The woman started chasing after him upon this realization, but A managed to escape. However, the next day, the woman appeared before him again, and this time, A wasn't so lucky. He was caught and dragged away. The woman's real name was Mori Hikiko. As a child, she had been severely bullied for having an arrogant name, and for being favored by the classroom teacher. Her tormentors once grabbed her and dragged her all around the school shouting, "Let's pull you around, Hikiko." This left her face horribly scarred. After that, Hikiko stopped going to school. At home, she faced constant abuse from her parents, and even began cutting her own face with a knife, slitting her mouth and her eyes further. She eventually became reclusive, staying in her room while her parents gave her nothing but a single rice ball and water every day, leaving it outside so they didn't have to look at her. Hikiko loved the rain and toads. As she grew older, she exacted revenge on her parents after that. She would wander outside on rainy days, attacking children, dragging them around. One thing to be noted is, it is said that she avoids children who are being bullied at the time, or those who share a similar name as the kids who bullied her. So if you ever meet Hikiko San, the best way to escape her is to either shout, "I'll drag you around," or show her a mirror, and that will make her run. So, what to look out for? Here are the characteristics of Hikiko San. Hikiko San was originally a tall, beautiful, and smart girl who was well liked by her teachers. However, jealousy from her classmates led to relentless bullying, and after becoming disfigured, her parents began abusing her as well. Whether she became a recluse on her own or was locked up by her parents varies in different versions of the story, but the outcome always remains the same. She eventually became a vengeful entity. In some versions, her parents' bodies are part of her gruesome collection. The origin of this legend may have been influenced by the real serial killer from the late 1980s in Saitama, whose name I will not mention again, who targeted children. Now, an interesting point to note is the origin of the name Hikiko-san. Hikiko-san's real name was said to be Mori Hikiko, a reference to pulling or dragging. The act of dragging children gave rise to this name, and also if you couple this with her reclusiveness, hikikomori in Japanese means socially withdrawn. It ties into the name, as she had become isolated due to her being bullied. Now, some believe that her name is actually an anagram of hikikomori, because her name is Mori Hikiko, and the word for socially withdrawn, hikikomori. Additionally, the word ekohiki, meaning favoritism, is thought to be linked to the reason she was bullied. If we can just go back to her appearance for just a second, the description of her slanted eyes and wide mouth is reminiscent of another famous urban legend that I've covered on this channel, Kuchisake Onna, the slit-mouthed woman who also targeted children. Hikiko-san's behavior of attacking children draws heavily from this previous urban legend. There are different variations of the Hikiko-san legend, which we can just go over quickly now. In some versions, Hikiko-san isn't the child who was bullied, but the mother of the child who was bullied to the point of becoming a recluse and eventually committing suicide. The vengeful mother now seeks out children and attacks them. In another version, once you've seen Hikiko-san and she's seen you, you become her next target no matter what you do. Some stories suggest that she only appears at certain times of the day, or that she came back to life specifically to seek revenge on those who bullied her. But the children she kills are often left at a place where Hikiko-san was bullied, or where she chose to end things for herself. It is widely believed that Hikiko-san was inspired by Kuchisake Onna, which became a national phenomenon in Japan in 1979. The story of the slit-mouthed woman who asked children if she was pretty terrified children all over Japan, and even sparked a brief social panic. The resurgence of urban legends, especially with the influence of the internet, shows how modern fears and social issues like bullying and isolation can manifest into new folklore, for better or for worse. This is a story from a recent trip I took to Osaka with a friend. It all started when we checked into our hotel in Namba. We were unpacking our things when I realized I'd forgotten my phone charger. My friend's phone was a different brand, so borrowing hers wasn't an option. After a quick search, I found that there was a Bic Camera store nearby, so I decided to head there to buy a charger. It was late afternoon and the sun was just beginning to set, but when I arrived at Bic Camera, the place was packed. It seemed like half of Osaka was there. They had the same idea as me to shop for electronics at the exact same time. The phone accessories were on the first floor, so I made my way through the crowd to browse the shelves. I was trying to decide which charger to get when I suddenly felt like someone was watching me. I glanced to my side and I saw a woman standing there in the middle of the crowd, staring right at me. She had bright, wavy hair and was wearing a striking red jacket. She wasn't doing anything, she was just standing there still as a statue. As I wondered what she wanted, a strange smell filled the air, like something was burning. I figured it must have been coming out of one of the nearby restaurants and made its way into the store. I looked around for the source of that smell, but when I turned back, the woman was gone. After buying my charger, I thought I'd take a quick look around the store. Just to kill some time. I headed up the escalator to the upper floors, where they had more tech stuff on display. I was just about to head to the 5th floor when I saw her again. The same woman, in the same red jacket, standing there motionless with her back to me. It was unmistakable. That wavy hair, that red jacket. It had to be her. But what was she doing here? She hadn't moved. Looked like she hadn't bought anything. She just stood there, in the middle of the aisle, just like before. I shook off the weird feeling and continued up the escalator. I was sure I'd left her behind on the 4th floor. But then, as soon as I stepped out onto the 5th floor, my heart stopped. There she was again, the woman in the red jacket, standing right in front of me. It just wasn't possible. I had seen her on the floor below, and I had taken the escalator straight up. There's no way that she could have gotten ahead of me. My skin prickled with fear. That was the moment I knew that she wasn't living. A shiver ran down my spine. In this bright, crowded electronics store in the middle of Osaka, I was being followed by a ghost. It made no sense, but I could feel it in my bones. I tried to keep calm, but I knew I had to get out of there. I made a quick loop around the floor, just to avoid looking like I was in a panic, then headed straight down the escalator. I didn't stop until I was back on the ground floor and out in the street. By now the sun had set and the night had fallen over the city. I thought about taking the taxi back to the hotel, but for some reason, I couldn't get one. Several empty cabs passed by, but none of them stopped for me. Finally, one pulled over, and as I reached for the door, the driver suddenly slammed it shut and drove off. It was beyond frustrating, but at this point, I just wanted to get back. I ended up walking all the way back to the hotel. When I arrived, my friend was waiting, looking a bit worried. I apologized for taking so long, and didn't mention the woman in the red jacket. I didn't want to scare her. She frightens easily, you see. We headed down to the restaurant in our hotel for dinner, and we just tried to relax. But my mind was racing. Later that evening, back in the room, while my friend was in the shower, I started Googling the history of the Bic Camera building. That's when I learned something that sent a chill through me. The store was built on the site of the Senichi department store, where a massive fire had occurred decades ago. This was one of the most deadliest fires in Japan's history, killing a staggering 118 people. The stories I found online were full of people sharing eerie experiences, strange sightings, odd sounds, unexplained smells, all at the same location. Many of the stories were about seeing figures that vanished, or feeling a presence that they couldn't explain. I started to wonder if the woman that I'd seen that afternoon, the one in the red jacket, had been one of the victims of that fire. Just then, my friend came out of the bathroom, towel drying her hair. She looked around the room, frowning. "What's wrong?" I asked, sensing her unease. She hesitated and then said, "Do you smell that? It smells like something's burning." This chilling story is about the steps at Nippori Station, a tale that has left even skeptics reconsidering their disbelief in ghosts. It all started when a friend of mine told me about a story he'd heard. At Nippori Station, if you exit the gates, turn right, and head up the stairs, there's something strange you might see when you turn around and you pause on the 23rd step. Intrigued and kind of egged on by a dare, I decided to check it out myself. I chose the dead of night, just before 2 a.m, to visit the station alone. The area didn't seem all that scary at first. The convenience store nearby made everything feel pretty normal. But as I climbed, I started to feel an icy chill crawl up my back at around the 10th step. Like someone was standing right behind me. Determined, I kept on going up, step by step, until I reached the 23rd step. Heart pounding, I forced myself to turn around, camera in hand to capture the proof of my courage. There, about 5 steps down, I noticed a dark shape, vague and shadowy. As I squinted, it began to sharpen. It was a young girl, with long, dark, black hair, crouched on the stairs in the fetal position, staring directly at me. Slowly, she started to rise, and made her way up, coming closer and closer. Frozen in terror, I couldn't move. When she was just a couple of meters away, her face remained blurred, but her mouth formed a strange smile, whispering something I couldn't quite make out. Despite my disbelief in ghosts, I felt a chill so deep that it was hard to breathe. Suddenly, I heard a voice from above, saying, "Go back, go back." I glanced up to see an elderly woman standing at the top of the stairs. "You need to leave," she said, her voice urgent. And that moment, the girl behind me vanished. I scrambled up the steps, my fear pushing me to reach the woman, and when I turned around, that girl, that shadowy figure I had seen, was long gone, as if she had never been there. I asked the woman, "What was that? What did you see?" And she just replied, "You don't need to know. Just leave, now." Shaking, I took a final photo of the now empty stairs and I fled to my friend's place. When I shared my experience, he didn't believe a word of it. And I get that, why would he? It left me frustrated though, and questioning what I had actually seen. I had been a firm non-believer before that night, but now I'm convinced ghosts are real. So if you ever find yourself in Nippori Station, just beware of the 23rd step, because if you turn to look around, you might not be alone. There's a story, one you may have heard, whispered late at night or found deep in the hidden corners of the internet. It's an old tale from a time of tragedy and loss. They say that knowing the story of Kashima-san is dangerous. Once you know it, you may not be able to escape. The story begins with the chaotic aftermath of World War II. Japan had been defeated, and the American military occupied much of the country. It was a time for unrest, and soldiers, both foreign and local, roamed the cities. On one fateful evening, near the Kakogawa station, a beautiful young woman, just 23 years of age, found herself walking alone. She was well known for her beauty, and perhaps this is what caught the attention of a group of American soldiers. What followed was unimaginably cruel. The soldiers attacked her, dragging her to a secluded spot where they raped and tortured her. That wasn't enough to prolong her suffering. They shot her multiple times, once in each arm and leg, before abandoning her in the street, bleeding out but still alive. She lay there for hours, half conscious and drifting closer to death, until a local doctor happened upon her. He did what he could, amputating her ruined limbs to stop the infection that had already set in. Miraculously, she survived, but the woman who had been known for her grace and beauty was left a broken shell, disfigured and devastated by what had been done to her. She couldn't bear it. The memories of what happened haunted her. She felt nothing but shame and despair. One day, during a trip out in a wheelchair, she seized the moment of distraction from her carer, flinging herself from atop her wheelchair, throwing her limbless body off a railway bridge into the path of an oncoming train. Her way of ending things was brutal. Her body was torn apart by the train. The police gathered her remains, but something was missing. Her head. It was never found. Life went on as the months passed, and the story of the young woman's tragedy faded from memory. But then, strange and terrifying things began to happen. In the town of Kakogawa, seemingly healthy people started to die suddenly under mysterious circumstances. It began with a single death, but soon there were more, and always in the same pattern. One household would be struck, then shortly after, a nearby home would experience the same eerie tragedy. The local police were baffled. As they interviewed the grieving families, they noticed a strange and chilling similarity. Each of the victims had mentioned on the morning of their death that they had seen an unusual light the night before. At first it seemed like a minor detail, but as the deaths continued, the pattern became undeniable. A detective began to map out the locations of the deaths on a city map, but that's when he made a horrifying discovery. The points of death, when connected, formed the shape of a headless, limbless torso, the same mutilated body of the woman who had thrown herself from the train bridge. It was as if her incomplete, dismembered form was crawling its way across the town, one death at a time. The police, now desperate to prevent more deaths, issued warnings to the public. If anyone saw the strange light, they were to report it immediately. But it wasn't just a light. Survivors, those who saw the light but hadn't yet died, described the horrific truth. They had been awakened in the dead of the night by a faint glow outside their window. At first it was small and distant, but as they watched, it grew larger and more defined. Staring intently, they could make out a figure within the light. Something was moving, writhing, crawling towards them. It was a torso, headless, armless, and legless, dragging itself along the ground, its shoulders heaving as it inched closer. The sight was too much to bear, and each person, in their terror, closed their eyes, hoping it would go away. But the next day they were found dead. Word spread quickly that if you closed your eyes, you were doomed. The mangled remains of Kashima San would claim you, but if you kept your eyes open and faced her, then there might just be a way to survive. One man who had been marked as her next victim went to the local Kashima shrine. In desperation, he was told by the priest that Kashima-san's vengeance was too great to be fully exercised. There was only one way to save himself. When she comes for you, the priest warned, do not close your eyes, no matter how terrified you are. Keep them open and repeat her name 3 times. Kashima-san, Kashima-san, Kashima-san. Only then will she stop. That night, as expected, the man awoke to the faint light at his window. He could hear a soft, scraping sound as the torso crawled towards him, closer and closer. His heart pounded and fear gripped him so tightly that he could barely breathe, but he forced his eyes to stay open, almost terrified to blink. As the bloodied, headless figure approached, he whispered, Kashima-san, Kashima-san, Kashima-san. The figure paused, then circled him, dragging itself around and around before vanishing into the darkness. He had survived. But the story doesn't end there. Kashima-san's curse is powerful and relentless. Even after that man left town, Kashima-san followed him. It is said once you know her story, once you've heard about her terrible fate, you too are at risk. So if you ever see the light and you hear that awful scraping sound in the night, remember, don't close your eyes. And if you see her, if she comes for you, repeat her name and just pray she spares you. But be warned, now that you know the story, she might come for you too. Sorry. This story was shared by a taxi driver who works the night shifts. It's one of those tales that just sticks with you. One you wouldn't want to hear if you're on a long drive in the middle of the night. It was around 2 a.m. and he was driving through Kobe when he saw a woman standing by the side of the road, waving for a taxi. Now you've got to understand, this wasn't the kind of place where you'd expect people to be standing around at that hour, especially not a lone woman. It was one of those eerie spots where you'd think no one in their right mind would be out here this late. But there she was, hand in the air, flagging him down. He felt a bit uneasy, but a fair's a fair, so he stopped and let her in. She got into the back seat, and he asked her where she wanted to go. That's when things started to get a bit strange. She asked him to take her deep into the mountains, a remote spot far off the beaten track. He started driving towards her destination as requested, but the whole time, he couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. As the car cruised down the empty roads, his mind started to wander. This has got to be a ghost, he thought to himself. Who else but a ghost would ask to be driven into the mountains at this time of night? You see, ghosts hailing taxis in Japan isn't exactly an unheard of phenomena. He could practically see the end of this story playing out in his head. You know, the one where you kind of glance in the rearview mirror, then suddenly the back seat's empty. Or worse, there's water dripping from where she had been sitting. Hi, Jay here. Now, if you remember my last Regional Ghost Stories video, about 3 or 4 videos back, I actually go over the story of the water dripping in the back seats of a taxi. It's a famous Kyoto urban legend. Anyway, back to the story. These are all the kind of tales that taxi drivers share with one another on those long distant trips and those rare moments they have their breaks to chat with one another. With those thoughts in his mind, he kept driving, feeling more and more on edge as the road turned into narrow, winding mountain passes. The deeper they went, the more isolated it became. The trees loomed closer, and the lights of the city faded into the distance. He couldn't help himself. He kept glancing in the rear view mirror, expecting her to disappear at any moment. Any second now, he thought, she's gonna be gone. He tried to laugh it off, but the tension in the car was building, and he was gripping the steering wheel tighter with every turn. But there she was, still sitting there. He could see her in the mirror, plain as day. She's still here, he thought, glancing again. Yeah, still here. Every time he checked, she was still in the back seat, still sitting quietly, staring ahead. No vanishing act, no sudden puddle of water soaking the seats, just her, watching the road. And the further they drove, the worse the roads became. Narrower, steeper, barely a track at this point. The sat-nav was hardly keeping up at this stage now. The signal was starting to cut out, leaving him in the middle of nowhere. His heart was pounding in his chest, and the fear was getting harder to shake off. What if she's not a ghost? He wondered. What if there's something else wrong? Eventually they reached a point in the road which was blocked. A no entry sign stood in front of him, marking the end of the line. He breathed a shaky sign of relief. Well, that's it, he thought. This is where she'll vanish. He turned around to look at the back seat, and she was gone. The seat was completely empty. He reached back to touch it, expecting it to be wet, expecting some trace of her to be left behind, some hairs, something. But no, the seat was as usual. She simply had vanished into thin air. Feeling a mixture of confusion and dread, he looked around. Where could she have gone? He thought, scanning the dark forest around him. Then, just ahead of his taxi, he saw something swaying gently in the wind. It was hanging from a tree branch, something pale and indistinct in the moonlight, moving back and forth. And then he heard it, a soft whisper next to his right ear, though he thought there was no one there. Thank you for finding me. His blood ran cold. The destination she'd asked him to take her to, the remote spot in the mountains, wasn't a house or a hidden cabin. It was the place where her body was hanging, her lifeless form. She had been dead all along. Thank you so much for watching. If you have an urban legend you'd like me to cover, please drop it in the comments below. And once again, thank you to Sakuraco and TokyoTreat for sponsoring this video. Link in the description below for an exclusive discount. Please stay tuned for future videos coming, and I'll see you soon.